Good morning and welcome to the 2025 School District of Niagara Veterans Day program. Thank you all for coming today. I am Lydia Beard and I will be the Master of Ceremonies for today's program. Veterans Day is intended to thank and honor all those who have served honorably in the military, both living and dead, whether in wartime or peace. Across generations, our veterans have answered the same call to serve something greater than themselves. Many who served in Korea fought in freezing cold and rugged terrain to defend freedom from far from home. Those who went to Vietnam returned to a difficult and divided time in our nation's history, yet continued to serve their communities with quiet strength and pride. Desert Storm veterans faced a new kind of conflict, fast, high-tech warfare in a desert half a world away. And in years since September 11th, 2001, men and women who served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and around the world have carried forward the same legacies of duty, courage, and honor. So today, as we listen to music, hear from our veterans, and reflect on the meaning of service, let us remember freedom is not free, and our gratitude should never be silent. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and remove your caps and place your right hand over your heart for the presentation and posting of the colors, followed by the playing of the national anthem by the Niagara High School Band under the direction of Miss Kim Yeager. You may be seated. Thank you to our color guard for the dignified presentation of the colors. That ceremony reminds us of the values and sacrifices represented by this flag: duty, service, and country. Today, we are honored to have our first guest speaker, Sergeant Dylan Bolander, a Quinnipiac, Michigan native. He is a retired U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant with 20 years of service. His career took him to Naval Air Station Iceland and Aviano Air Base in Italy, and Misawa Air Base in Japan. He also deployed with the U.S. Army in Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan in 2009, and supported post-combat video operations at Air Force Mortuary Affairs operations in Dover, Delaware. He earned numerous honors, including the Air Force Commendation Medal, Joint Service Commendation Medal, and the Air Force Meritorious Service Medal, awarded upon retirement. Bolander covered 3 presidential events celebrating the multinational victory of Operations Allied Force in Italy, and recognizes Veterans Day participants in Korea and New York City. A graduate of the Defense Information School in Maryland and a military motion media program in Syracuse University. He completed assignments with multiple American Forces network locations abroad and the 3rd Combat Camera Squadron in San Antonio, Texas. Now back in his hometown, he lives with his 2 cats, Squeaker and Bucky, and works as a writer and illustrator. Please join me in welcoming Sergeant Bolander.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all very much for being out here. It's nice to see you took the time to recognize all of us on this day. I don't know if this is a sore point with anybody over the last 2 games, but I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the Green Bay Packers, but there's a reason for it. It ties in. I won't talk about what happened last night in the cold, or that Carolina game I was at. But what I learned was when I was at that Carolina game, I was looking, I got there about an hour before kickoff, so I sat in my seat and I was looking at all of these kids, probably between the age range of 4 to 9, and they all had their Jordan Love jerseys and their Christian Watson jerseys, and Love and Watson were out in the field, and they were all warming up, and these kids were cheering them on. They were just going crazy, and their parents were holding them up and all that, and I'm like, these kids, they see, you see them play on television and all that, and you watch like Sports Center where they're talking and all that, and they're showing highlights, but then all of a sudden, you see it in person, and you're like, these kids see them as their heroes, these uniformed players. And then I started thinking, because I knew I had to make this speech, I was like, I'm going to talk about my hero who was in a uniform, and that's my grandfather, Robert Hugh Douglas. He was one of the kids born right before our country went through the Great Depression of about 100 years ago. Those of you who are Niagara students probably study that in your history class, and those of us who are in their 50s or whatever know about that just from documentaries and whatnot. My grandpa was a big part of 20th century history, not only as a child of the Great Depression, but also somebody who decided to become a soldier and enlist in the United States Army during World War II. He fought for his country between the 1940s, after we became part of World War II, taking on the Axis allies, all the way into the 1960s. So he took part in World War II, Korea, and also the beginning of Vietnam. What really makes him stand out is, and I have something that was bestowed to me by my grandmother when he passed away, and that's his Bronze Star Medal. My grandpa was a very selfless man, and I only learned about this not from my grandfather, but from my grandma. When he passed away, she gave me a lot of what he had because I was 16 at the time. I had yet to join the Air Force. I did that when I was 24. And she wanted me to have this because she knew that he was an important part of my life. And how he earned this was he and some of his soldiers, they were in France. The Army has what's called a squad, part of a battalion and a company, but in that day he was part of the squad. He was a small group of his fellow soldiers were with him. And the Germans showed up. And my grandfather just selflessly had everybody else run this way. This is according to the citation that I read that's been long gone, but burned into my brain probably for the rest of my life. My grandfather was rear cover. He sat there with his gun while all his fellow soldiers got to safety. He and one other soldier in his squad took fire onto the German soldiers while everyone got to safety. So he literally put himself out there to sacrifice himself for his teammates. And that to me, I didn't really understand what that was until I got older. But 16-year-old me who's reading this, I'm realizing for the first time that not only was my grandfather a soldier who fought in 3 conflicts like I knew, but he was also a hero who was willing to put his life on the line for his fellow soldiers. So, and that says a lot about my grandpa because he never told me about this. I learned about it from my grandma. It blew my mind that my grandfather was doing something that selfless, but at the same time, knowing the man the way I did, it didn't shock me at all. So World War II comes to an end, and if you know from history, the Allies won, and we went on from there. But then he continued his career over in the Korean Peninsula when it was a police action. It wasn't a war, it was a police action. So when he took part in that police action, he again showed what he was all about to be able to survive multiple tours over there. And then in the beginning of Vietnam, right around 1963, a few years before he retired, he took part in that conflict over there. It just blew my mind when I found all this out about my grandfather and what he had done in his time in uniform. And I realized that I didn't have a hero, and I'm realizing this upon his passing. I never had a hero, or I never had a role model. I had a hero who was in uniform, and that was my grandfather, versus just having a grandfather who I knew served his country. So my impression of him really just took off through the roof, and I never got the chance, sadly, to tell him how proud I was of him. And it never was one of those things that dawned on me that when he was in uniform to thank him for his service. But I guess now for the first time ever, I will thank him for his service and what he's done. My grandpa was not only a hero for his actions to me, but also for what he did to help me out. He taught me about integrity, which was one of the Air Force core values that I had. He always kept me in line. One day we were in Crystal Falls, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, he goes, "What is VE Day?" Well, I'm 12 years old at the time. I have no idea what VE Day is. I didn't think they taught us in our history class. So he's like, "Victory in Europe." And he just instills in me what it is to know about what your country did. And that helped me a lot in my career as I got older, and I wanted to do something, other than just being somebody who was a productive member of society. I wanted to contribute to society, to protect them like my grandfather did. So those lessons that he taught me sitting in his red Ford truck outside the Crystal Falls Ben Franklin really carried a lifetime. And I'll also talk about some of the conversations we had at Shopco in the parking lot, the old Shopco you might remember, when he just couldn't listen to Led Zeppelin anymore. And then I realized when I saw his cassette collection, he loved Glenn Miller and Harry James, so rock and roll is definitely something he didn't care about. So I always found that to be kind of the humorous side of him. When I sat there in that stadium at Lambeau Field, and I was sitting there in section 124, row 17, and I'm sitting there watching these kids just enamored by Christian Watson coming back and by Jordan Love out there. I realized that it's awesome that they have those uniformed Packers players, those athletes as their heroes. But I was very lucky in that I had my own hero who was in uniform, who was my grandfather. And what he taught me is the reason why I'm here, and I eventually became Master Sergeant Bolander, and why I did my 20 years and I retired, because of the values he instilled in me. So for all of you students here and maybe over here, if you're looking for a hero, sometimes it might not be somebody you see on SportsCenter or you see playing a game or anything else, or something you see on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Sometimes it's a member of your own family. And you can look to your family and you can ask your family on a day like this, does anybody in our family have any military background? Did any of them ever serve? And you might find out something like I found out about my grandfather and what he had done. And it surprised me. And to this day, I hold this as one of the most important possessions that I have. And I'm very grateful that of all the people who could have been my grandfather, that Robert Hugh Douglas was my main role model. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sergeant Bolander. We are so appreciative that you took the time to be with us today. Now we turn to another special part of our program. Our elementary students are here to share a few songs to honor our veterans. The elementary students will now perform the song, Thank You, Soldiers. Next, the kindergarten, under the direction of Mrs. Dollar and Mrs. Steinbrecher, will perform When the Flag Goes By. kindergarten. Next, we have the students from Mrs. Santoni and Mrs. Champagne's first grade class, and they will sing "Oh, I Love America." Next will be Mrs. Pip and Mrs. Wood's second grade class singing You're a Grand Old Flag. Thank you, second graders, and thank you to all of our elementary students for that beautiful performance, honoring our veterans. Your voices remind us how important it is to show gratitude for the men and women who have served in our country. Now to introduce our next guest speaker, Major Mary Ann Van Hula Perry, U.S. Army retired, is a local girl who grew up on a farm just outside of town. Graduating from Niagara High School in 1967, she went to Milwaukee directly after high school and has returned home after 56 years, 20 of those years living off the grid in the wilderness of the Mojave National Preserve in Southeast California. Mary Ann enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve in 1975 and by 1980 graduated from Ossifer Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia. Commissioned second lieutenant on her 31st birthday, Major Perry commanded that the 415th Replacement Company stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia during the Iraq War. She served in combat service supports units her entire military career in Milwaukee and in California, retiring in 1996 after 20 years. Major Perry has Associate of Arts degree in Commercial Art from Milwaukee Technical College and a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from the National University, a Master of Large System Management degree from University of Southern California, and completed Command and General Staff College during her civilian career. Mary Ann worked as a logistics readiness inspector of a U.S. Army Reserve unit under the command of the 6th Army. She later managed ground transports for the space station and Delta II rocket programs for McDonnell Douglas and Boeing companies. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Major Mary Ann Perry.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank everyone in attendance for being here on this important day, honoring and thanking all military veterans for their service. I must also honor those close to me. My father, Joseph Van Hula, was an Army Ranger who served in the Asiatic Pacific Theater during World War II. And my late husband, Army Chief Warrant Officer 4, James Michael Perry, a Vietnam vet who served 26 years combined in the Air Force and Army. I grew up on a farm just outside of Niagara, and graduated high school here in 1967 and left home at 17 to attend school in Milwaukee, where I earned an Associate of Arts degree in Commercial Art. By the way, paid for by Marinette County. A 2-year degree that later qualified me for many opportunities not even related to art. In 1975, I was 25 and broke when I enlisted in the United States Army Reserve Women's Army Corps, WAC. Yes, I was a WAC. The Women's Army Corps was disbanded in 1978, and all WAC units were integrated with male units. I enlisted because I needed money, but realized I was a patriot. When my first sergeant in basic training asked me why I joined the Army, I immediately responded, "Because I'm a patriot, First Sergeant. I love my country." Up until that time, I had never said those words. You might think that sounds kind of hokey, but those sentiments remain with me to this day. Army reservists are not just people on a list. They work in civilian jobs and carry on a parallel career in the Army on weekends, weeknights, annual training, and must meet the same training and fitness requirements as if they were full-time military. And when called to serve wherever our president, who is our commander-in-chief, sends us, we must be ready. My military experience was not that of those who serve or have served in combat zones all over the world. But combat service support is an integral part of military operations. My entire career was in combat service support. Beginning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then California, where I transferred to a personnel service unit at Fort MacArthur, California, as a staff sergeant, E6. And by then a civilian employee supporting the unit. It was there I applied for Officer Candidate School, OCS. Fort Benning, Georgia had opened for women at OCS in 1977. I attended in 1980. We were a rarity at Fort Benning School for Boys, the home of the 90-Day Wonder, the prestigious home of the 82nd Airborne and the Army Ranger School. As women, we were segregated from our platoons and required to take pregnancy tests every week. I was commissioned Second Lieutenant Adjutant General Corps branch on my 31st birthday, which was the oldest commissioning age for Officer Candidate School. My class started with 230 men and 15 women, of which 141 men and 9 women earned their commission that day. Once in California, I progressed in rank in both military and civilian education with a Bachelor of Business Administration degree, which the Army paid half of, and a Master of Large Systems Management degree from the University of Southern California, USC, which McDonnell Douglas Company paid for. And I attended Army Command and General Staff College. Because of the generosity of Marinette County, the U.S. Army, and McDonnell Douglas Company, I gained confidence, experience, and ability to gain excellent employment with the government and later aerospace managing ground transportation for the space station and Delta II rocket programs. It was not until after 16 years in the Army in 1991 that I was called to active duty for Desert Shield, which became Desert Storm, which then the Iraqi War. And as a senior captain, commanded the 415th Replacement Company out of Long Beach, California. We received orders deploying to the Middle East and unexpectedly were assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia for the duration. When I left Officer Kennedy's school, I said, I'm never coming back here. Never say never. We renovated World War II barracks and worked with active duty units and other reserve units from all over the country. And we never knew if 5 or 500 would arrive for processing. Working 24-hour operations, we housed and processed thousands of U.S. Army male, enlisted, and officer personnel. And by accident, 6 of the most fit and Amazonian women, 82nd Airborne enlisted women I've ever seen, over to the war zone, loading them on civilian 747 jets every night. Our situation at Fort Benning was not stable. There were 93 unguarded or secured access roads, and we were not issued bullets. At times, I had as many as 2,300 weapons in my arms room, vulnerable to any enemy infiltration. My soldiers carried baseball bats while on guard duty. We did do a great job, and on returning home, we're greeted by the Laker girls, which, with much fanfare, participated in the Million-Man Hollywood Military Parade and enjoyed much applause and appreciation. The crowd showered us with flowers. My battle-hardened Vietnam platoon sergeants teared up over all the love and attention and reminded me they were not treated so generously on returning from Vietnam. We don't have enough time for me to tell you the exciting and spicy incidents in my life, like the time a commander pulled a loaded gun on me after I grounded his maintenance unit for lack of maintenance. Or the time me and the chaplain rescued a young soldier from a military off-limits bar where he was having a psychotic episode after ingesting cough medicine and alcohol and thought he was a general officer challenging the Texas National Guard to a fight. Or the year and a half worked for the post office in Sema, California, which was infested with snakes, rats, and scorpions, just so my wilderness community could get mail. Or the time my husband and I were snowbound for nearly 2 weeks in the desert. I retired with 20 years service in 1996, and my husband and I later moved to the wilderness in the million-acre Mojave National Preserve in southeastern California, 100 miles from town and off the grid, where we lived for nearly 20 years. We called it paradise. In June 2005, we lost our home and everything we owned in a wildfire, started by 11 lightning strikes, which burned 70,000 acres. We rebuilt and recaptured our peace and tranquility until my husband passed away in February of 2022. I sold my home in the desert, lived in Mojave Valley, Arizona for 7 months, and finally, after 56 years, came back home to Niagara. I bought a home here, regained my roots, and enjoy the love of 6 brothers and sisters who still live in the area. I am still serving, but in my community, assisting with township elections and volunteering with Karen's Pantry right here in Niagara. In closing, I wish to thank the American Legion Post 136 for asking me to be their guest speaker. Thank you for attending on this special Veterans Day of recognition as we honor the sacrifices of all those who have and still are serving in the military for this great country, keeping us free. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Perry, for sharing your experiences and your message with us. It is a privilege to have you here today. The high school band will now perform the songs of each branch of the service veterans who are presented. We ask you to stand and be acknowledged when your branch's song is played. If you are a veteran or currently serving in the United States Navy, please rise. If you are a veteran or currently serving in the United States Army, please rise. If you are a veteran or currently serving in the United States Marine Corps, please rise. If you are a veteran or currently serving in the United States Air Force, please rise. serving in the United States Space Force, please rise. If you are a veteran or currently serving in the United States Coast Guard, please rise. Thank you, Mrs. Yeager and the band, for that wonderful performance. We would now like to take the time to acknowledge each of the veterans who are here with us today. Veterans, please stand when your name is called. Audience, please hold your applause until all of the names have been read. Glenn Lantane, Roy Outkelt, Steve Wescher, Paul Westrich, Tricia Westrich, Mike Legay, Carl Lamerix, Roger Ayen, Pan Rekla, Jeff Shenek, Nick Buckland, Scott Heggie, Dylan Bolander, Samuel Learned, Marianne Perry, Terry Kimmett, Suzanne Gedvik, Michael F. Day, Warren Towns, Phil Towns, Alan Dunlay, Anthony Westrich, Wade Devernon, Brenda Lanware, Ben Lucas, Bruce Lahabert, Ken Van Abel, Todd M., Greg Holmes, Phil Westrick, Ken Henson, Amber Garbrecht, Bradley Condrath, Grace Murray, Donald Lynch, Jay Godrow, Lucy Finger, Michael Madison, Calvin Towns. And for our Legion Auxiliary, Louis Outkelt, Ann Hallegrew, and Tinker Rugg. If we missed any veterans' names, we ask you to also stand and be recognized. Thank you, veterans, for your service and for being with us today. We are deeply honored by your presence. Before we conclude today's program, we pause to remember a special group of heroes who are not able to be with us, those who are prisoners of war and those who are still missing in action. A prisoner of war, or POW, is a person captured or held by an enemy power during an armed conflict. A missing in action, or an MIA, is someone whose status and whereabouts remain unknown. While a known POW is not considered MIA, someone listed as MIA may be later identified as POW. Sadly, for some families, the MIA designation becomes permanent. The POW and MIA table set on the gym floor serves as a solemn reminder of those who are still missing in the hope that they will one day return home. Each item on the table represents a different aspect of their sacrifice. As of August 2024, the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency reports that more than 81,200 American service members remain unaccounted for. Each of those numbers represents a family waiting, a story unfinished, and a sacrifice that should never be forgotten. The black and white POW MIA flag, first adopted in 1972, is a symbol of our nation's promise: you are not forgotten. As we remember those who never came home, let us take one final moment of reflection to honor all who have served and sacrificed for our nation. Please join me in a moment of silence. Color guard, please prepare to retire the colors. Students and guests, as the colors are retired, please stand with your right hand over your heart. Please remain respectful, quiet, and reflect upon the service of our veterans. This concludes our 2025 School District of Niagara Veterans Day program. Thank you all for coming. We'd like to invite all veterans and members of the community to visit our Hall of Heroes, located in the hallway near the district office, which can be accessed through the theater. We have refreshments and compliments of Mrs. Lundeen and her cooking staff for our guests. If you know of any service members who are not featured in the hall, please let the district office know. Guests, you may exit first. Students, you may now return to your classrooms through the back hallway. Thank you.